Good evening, everyone. It is July 4th, 2023. Let's start off with the ES. Now, I mentioned in the weekly outlook that I'm not looking for any sort of huge moves. In an ideal world, what I'm actually looking for is a move down into these 4220s. And I think that'll kind of be our weekly range, given that we just have 3 days and tomorrow is that FOMC minute session. So maybe something like this sort of range. Sub 100-point range for the week would not surprise me too much, given how many we've had, given how many sub 150-point range weeks we've had since about, what would you say, about April or March. Wouldn't surprise me too much. Start of the second half of the year, start of the quarter, start of the month. It is a Wednesday with FOMC minutes, so we'll be awaiting that data, although nothing really probably will surprise us. Now, with that in mind, given that I'm looking for about a 100-point move downwards this week, intraday, I think we will go ahead and tag that 91, and I'd be surprised if we get much of a bigger move than about 30 points heading into the minutes. So that kind of brings us down to 44, let's call it 55. The gap goes from 44.65 down to about 44.37 if my memory is serving me correctly. So I do not think that we will be closing that gap tomorrow just based on averages. I think it would be an unlikely move to get all the way down to 44.37 tomorrow, perhaps Thursday, perhaps Friday, but I don't think that'll be coming at us tomorrow. Instead, I'll be looking for perhaps a defense of that 2+2 low, that Friday low of the day around 44.65, and then rotating back upwards. Or if we move to the upside, maybe rotating downwards. Same thing on the Nasdaq, looking for a smaller range, and much like the ES, we have a large gap that I do not think will get filled. That gap instead running from excuse me, hard to keep track of the NQ, the monster, about 238 down to about 145. So kind of the top of that pivot down to about way over here. Is that our gap? And likewise, I doubt we get much more than 150-point range tomorrow. If even, I don't think that'll happen. So not really looking for that gap to close either. So and the NQ notably, once again, unable to take that high of the year out during last week's end of month, whereas the ES was at least able to take it out by a couple ticks, so that is notable. And that does make me a little bit more short biased on the Nasdaq, and makes me think that if we do come down to that 15,100 area, that we'd be less likely to have that move way back up to 300s, whereas on the ES, I could very well see us coming down to 44.22 and making it above 44.55 again into the close of the week. So, with all that in mind, given the overall outlook, how are we trading this? Well, these are the setups. That's about it. Why is it like this? Well, I don't really see any spot that I'd be willing to go long within the gap, which goes down to 44.37. So that eliminates everything below 44.65. So it eliminates everything from right about here until way down here, this 27.5-point range. And given that constraint, I doubt we'll be trading a 50-point range tomorrow, at least the pre-minute session. So that kind of leaves us in here. If we hold the gap, where it starts at 65 down to about 55. So if we hold kind of this area, this right around here. So if we hold this kind of zone, I'd be willing to take 72s long. That was just kind of an important level back around the mid-June. I'd be willing to take that for a long, if also the high of the year, this number over here has been untested. So essentially a false breakdown, moving back above a key level, getting long for the potential move into the high of the year. So kind of something like this, about a 34-point range. A little bit ambitious, but even if it moves into here, I'm a happy camper. Now, that's the long side. Also a long setup. If we get a gap up, I'm willing to take 92s long. Before we tag 45.17, so there's just kind of a couple high of the days there from back in, I don't know, March or April of 2022. Can't remember. Other than those longs, I'm looking at a couple shorts. The idea being either if we run the week prior's high, this couple of weeks ago, if we run this high, if we get a tag of 94 and come back below 91s, I'll be willing to hit it short. If we instead only get a run, if we break if we only break, if we do not get a run up there, but if we break yesterday's low of the day, this Monday half session's low of the day, 79s, kind of back test around these 88s and come down backwards, back downwards, so essentially failing to run all of these highs. So if we break the low, fail to run the highs, I'll be looking for a short to get down into that 65 area. On the Nasdaq, a little bit more eager to trade within the gap. Quite a few more scenarios here. If we fail to take the high of the year, I'm willing to take this 436 down to about 416 area. I'm willing to take this short if we fail to take out that high of the year. If instead we don't even get that high, if we get a tag of 392, so essentially a run of this overnight high, if we get a tag of that, I'll be willing to take 367 short, just a nice level here before a run of this low. And if we get a tag of just this high over here, this weekly high, if we get a tag of that, I'd be willing to take 357s short before a run once again of this previous day's low. On the long side, if we do not get a tag of that 377, that prior week's high, and run this daily low, I'll be willing to take 324s long. If 200 to 238 holds, I'll be willing to take 265s long. 265s have been a critical level going back to mid-June. Idea being the same as on the ES with 43.65, sort of 44.65. That is our opening of the gap starting there on NQ at 238s. So if that 200 to 238 holds, I'd be willing to take 265s long. Similarly down here, if that T plus 2, if that 200 to 224 area holds, the VWAP close I think is 224. If that holds down to kind of 200-ish, kind of this, this zone in general, if that holds, be willing to take T plus 2 long. And if we do get some sort of larger sell-off, which is always possible on the NQ, if we hold that RTH high of the day, wherever it is, somewhere around here or back there, if we hold that high of the day, I think it's around 140s. If we hold it, I'd be willing to take 167s long, that also being a nice level. And if we finally get a hold of the 121, so the weekly point of control down to the VWAP close at 098s, if we hold that 120 to 98 long, I'd be willing to take that critical 139 level for a long, holding numerous times on this 30-minute chart, critical key support and resistance level. So that's what I got. Bit of a long video. My bad. Hope that helps. I don't really think we'll have much happening overnight, so I don't think this will even change before the morning. But hope that helps. Hope that makes sense. Have a great night. Trade safe.